Hey guys, it is the Bearded Watchman yet again. I made a video earlier and I felt it right to make a new video as well to update you guys on what's happening in the Middle East. Just a few stories, it's going to be really quick here and I'm going to just breeze through this. So let's start first and foremost with a very interesting and very important event that's kind of underway here, and that is the exposure, or should I say the resignment, or I don't really know what you would call it, but they're basically trying to do away with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. It's not good news. It's not good news because, as we know, Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be a very striking, religious, God-fearing man. He's held back a lot of craziness that has come on to Israel. And so with him removed, that's probably not going to be right. As a lot of you probably know, if you do your research, you'll know certainly that Israel is mainly controlled by the Jesuit Zionist Command. They're Zionists, they're religious Zionists, and they're political Zionists. But like the Rothschilds, for sake, they're Zionists, but they're political Zionists. They're evil Zionists. And then you have God-fearing Israelites that are in Israel. Those are upright, God-fearing, religious Zionists. But I'm sure that there are some sketchy factions in that as well. Anyway, let's start with this. The LA Times first reported that Prime Minister Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, was to resign this Monday coming up and likely to be indicted soon with possible 6 months jail time. Now, here's a little bit of backstory in this. It seems like it's a possible witch hunt because he's a hinderer of the two-state solution. He has not been for the two-state solution. And as we know, that is it's biblically prophesied for them to divide the land for spoil. And I believe that Psalms 83, where they try to do away with Israel being a nation and they try to divide the land. So he has been a major barrier in the two-state solution of Palestine trying to get its own land and make Jerusalem its capital. And they just don't like him. So with him removed, it'll be easier. Now to continue, now after a 14-month-long investigation, Israeli police have reportedly recommended this week, that he be indicted on charges of bribery and breach of trust. Forgive me, guys. I'm in sunny Long Beach right now, and it's a little loud on Ocean Boulevard here. So the Israeli police have reportedly recommended that he be indicted on 2 charges of bribery and breach of trust. Now, the first case is called Case 1000, and they say that by the gifts of fair, he worked with certain individuals to receive like a lot of gifts and stuff. A lot of people was gifted him certain things when they met with him and things, and so they're saying that basically that's bribery, basically, and they're trying to get him out on that. And then the second case is called Case 2000, whereby they mention he worked with a publisher or a media outlet to his favor, paying them off for favorable sources or favorable media stories. And so they're saying that that's kind of a breach of trust. And so they're trying to get him out on both of those. Now, where does all of this stem from? It stems from him accepting some cigars. Kid you not, guys, he accepted a few cigars, and because of that, it kind of opened out this long investigation. And it goes a little bit deeper, but that's pretty much the major state of what's happening there with that. So the leadership of Israel is under attack, and it's not just any leadership. It's Benjamin Netanyahu, which is a very important figure to help keep Israel stable. So moving forward, what's happened from a militaristic standpoint that we see within biblical prophecies? Okay, I'll get to which verses in biblical prophecy that are unfolding, but let's start with this. So this week, Israel attacked 12 Iranian military targets after Syria shot down an Israeli F-16 fighter jet. Now, prior to them shooting that down, Syria shot it down, and it was an Israeli fighter jet. Prior to that, the F-16 jet was targeting an Iranian drone that was a spy plane that was flying around an occupied Golan Heights, which we know is Israeli territory. So they defended themselves and shot it down. After they shot it down, Syria shot down the jet that shot down the spy plane. And we'll get to kind of how that transpired in just a minute. However, there was a lot of backlash because of that, right? So the U.S. buildup in forces, the U.S. buildup forces in Syria with a standoff in Turkey is kind of paving the way to aligning certain countries and nations together. On one end, you have the Israelis, the U.S., and all of her allies in the Middle East, and Saudi Arabia as well. And then you have Syria, Russia, Iran, and that's just the Middle East. That's just that theater of war. When you go to Southeast Asia, I talked about it in previous videos, where you have U.S., NATO, and other allies like Japan and Australia and South Korea, things like that, against China, Russia, and North Korea in that theater of war. But specifically with the Middle East, you have things kind of lining up like this. In this latest attack of the Israeli jet, which, by the way, is the first Israeli plane down since the early 1990s. I believe it was the 1992. It's a big deal, and it's just paving the way for the stars to be aligned with this set of nations versus this set of nations, and it's the beginning of the Gog and Magog war, to be completely honest. But a new batch of U.S. troops have just arrived in Manbij to protect the Kurds and the U.S. soldiers. Now, if you remember in the video that I posted early last week, I stated that this is how the situation is unfolding. The Kurds are mainly Christian, not all of them, but mostly Christians. The Turkish don't like the Kurds, and the Kurds right now are stationed in northwestern Syria. Now, Turkey is on the offense because they've been receiving missiles from that area, so to speak, quote unquote. We don't know if it's true or not. And so they've been on the offensive to attack the Kurds, and they've stated to the U.S., if you stand with the Kurds in western Syria, we're going to attack them, and we're going to attack you as well. If you don't stand with them, because right now the U.S. is east of the Euphrates in northeastern Syria. That's where the U.S. and her allies are stationed. The Turkish are on record to say, we'll demolish the Kurds, and then we'll come for you guys as well. Okay, we're going to do away with all of these groups and factions that are in northeastern and northwestern Syria, which is interesting because they're a NATO ally, Turkey is, and so is the U.S. And so it's very interesting because you have two NATO allies going against each other. But anyway, this new buildup of U.S. soldiers now that is about 2 days old right now, a fresh new batch of U.S. soldiers that has not been talked about in mainstream media. You will not hear that there. It's interesting because they're no longer on the east side of the Euphrates. They're on the west side of the Euphrates now. They're right there in the way of the Turkish offense against the Kurds, or rather they're standing with the Kurds. So now they've traveled across the Euphrates, and now they're on the western part of the Euphrates in northwestern Syria. Extremely, extremely interesting, guys. Okay, so with all of that being said, let's get back to the original event that we were talking about. The Baltimore Sun reportedly saying that Israel took out half of Syria's air defenses in airstrikes. Syria is saying that they will no longer allow Israel to attack inside of its borders without sending missiles to the Golan. So basically, you have Israel going on massive airstrikes against Syria because of them downing their plane, of which they were downing on this Iranian spy plane. And then you have Syria retorting back by saying, okay, if you're going to do airstrikes within our borders, we're going to be sending some missiles to the Golan Heights, which is a civilian area. And Israel don't want that, but they've already taken out half of the Syrian air defense. So you have them kind of battling back with each other, and then the Iranians are there as well, saying that they're going to retort to Israel as well. You have General Mad Dog Mathis of the U.S. saying that Israelis have a absolute right to defend themselves. So basically, you know, the U.S. is standing by Israel, and they're just kind of, I guess, kind of pushing the war tide as well. The rhetoric is at an all-time high, guys. It really is. So let me end on this right quick. Now, after all of that said and done, Russia was reportedly the one who ordered the Israeli jet to be shot down. So Russia was apparently the one who gave the Syrians the green light to do it, because Russians, they're not necessarily allies to the Israelis, but Putin and Netanyahu talk all the time about peace, and they seem to be on good accord. But the Russians were the one who gave the green light, probably because their personal allies, the Iranians, were mad and disgruntled because their spy plane got shot down. So instantly the Russians gave them the green light. This is from a former Russian diplomat confirmed on Egyptian television. So all of these sources have been confirmed, guys. Let me end on this. What do you have here? Well, you have a perfect mixture and cocktail of Ezekiel 38, the Gog and Magog war. And let's run down the list. You have the Russians are present. The Syrians are obviously present because it's in Syria. The Iranians or the Persians in biblical times are present. The bands of Tagarma, which is Turkey, are present. You have Ethiopia and Libya with extremist groups that they're funding and allowing to just thrive in their countries. They're present. You have Assad's army, the actual political army of Syria. They're present. The FSA, which is the Free Syrian Army, which is backed by the US. They're present. The Kurds are present in northern, eastern, and western Syria, northwestern specifically Syria. The Americans obviously are present. The British are present. And then finally you have the Iranians and even the Chinese. If this wasn't the cultivation of the Gog and Magog war, you have all the players present, ready to go, guys. As you should be. You should be ready to go. Get yourselves in order. Get your houses in order. Obviously, we're not meant to live a life of fear and fear-mongering, but we are meant to watch and stay mindful of what's happening. It's starting to happen, guys. It is. I'll be back with more biblical prophecies and what's going on with the world today. Like this video, subscribe, share, and I hope to see you guys at the next Bearded Watchman. Thank you.